You listen to Kendrick and Matt on the Slip and Dip podcast.
Oh, beautiful, man.
Woo! Episode 126. Kenny Johnson, Matthew Wells, Slip and Dip podcast. Back in your life. Coming back up for me. 10 grueling days in the NYC. Saw 2 fight cards. Last night saw one and new and one and still. And then Matt was watching Full Time UFC 245 where we had 2 and still and a surprising and new. I'm full with a lot of HKOs today, hot Kendrick opinions, so we're going to get into a lot of stuff today.
Oh my gosh. Did you just coin that right now? Is that your new term, HKOs? That's hilarious. Before we get into all that, it was a very, very busy combat sports weekend.
On both sides of the arenas.
Absolutely. First off, hit that subscribe button if you have not already on the YouTube. We would appreciate it. Thumbs up the video as well. On this week's show, we have 2 guests for you guys. One, Cody Stamann, UFC bantamweight, coming off that controversial decision. We dive into that. And Tracey Trudeau, she is a mental health advocate, and when I say we go deep on mental health, we go deep on mental health and everything. And how it's a fantastic listen. It's something different than what we usually give you guys. We usually just give you guys fighters and trainers and whatever. We go deep into the medical side of the fight game, and particularly an area that doesn't get talked about very much because of stigmas and things like that. So we go deep on that. If you're into that sort of thing, you're really, really going to enjoy this talk with Tracey because she is amazing and she dives into a whole bunch of stuff.
And friends of the show showed up and showed out in both arenas with spectacular knockouts.
100%.
And right now, I'm working on 2 of them coming on our next episode. And if we can sprinkle in a Timo Lopez, we're gonna have like the 3 hottest prospects, or I guess breakthrough performers in boxing and MMA all in one episode. If everything pans out the way I'm trying to behind the scenes.
Yeah, 100%. So where do you want to start?
Which one? We go UFC or boxing?
We'll start with boxing because you were there. You were actually on the scene for the boxing.
I don't care what nobody said. I was 4-row ringside. One of the best views I've had. Saw Terrence Crawford show his greatness. I don't care what nobody said. That dude got put on his ass in the 4th. That was not a push. The dude hit him. He was down low. He kept staying on his ass and got him down. And I think this is it. This one blood came out. But props to him. He got up, as you can see in the footage, started putting them hands on him and showed the world why he's a champion and one of the best in the world. This guy had never been stopped or put down.
Yeah, you could tell. He was putting those hands on Bud, like you said.
Yeah, but this guy also showed, regardless if it's MMA or boxing, when you got people that have talent versus somebody that's considered a Pantheon great or one of the best or future Hall of Famer type, you got to take chances, and it's not about we're going to outbox, or in MMA, I'm going to outstrike you, out-wrestle you. At the end of the day, you just got to fight. And he pulled off what a lot of people need to do when they're fighting a Valentina. We always talk about how big a gap is. Somebody's got to fight her. We're not going to be MMA. We're going to fight. That's what my man Mean Machine pulled out. And another good example was flipping over to 245 was the Jermaine and Amanda Nunes. Jermaine's one of the top 5 skill ladies we've ever seen fighting GOAT. And even as good as she is, she needed a lot more dog in her and should have made more of a fight than I'm going to use my skill to try to come through and catch you with something, and it didn't work out for her. You got to, when you fight some of those all-time like great people, you got to fight at the end of the day and just make it comfortable and bring it.
Yeah. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. So, Teofimo.
The guy. He came on this podcast and said 6 months ago he would be a world champion, and he did that. That's why he said he would come on. We ain't got the day, but they didn't show the whole hit. That right hand hook. They are gonna show it. Boom! Best punch of the night. And then Richard Comey is a pretty good fighter. He's no bum.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. That's why everybody was so shocked that this happened in the second round like that.
Here's a crazy story. I'm sitting there going down on the damn train from New Jersey to MSG. I'm like going through my little routine before I get out on the train. We get ready to go to Penn Station, and I realize I left my damn camera at New Jersey. boy, I haul off and went to Plan B in my life. Make a long story short, I go back to New Jersey, get the camera, Uber back, cost $50. It ain't cheap out there. Uber back, and I literally sit down right as that round started. So I saw what I wanted to see. Because I wanted to see the Teofimo in the Crawford fight anyway. So I got to see his coordination live, and I got to see all the full of the Crawford fight. So it worked out for your boy. But yeah, that shit there was kind of nerve-wracking for a minute there.
Wow.
Pulled it off, though.
Shout out to Virgil Ortiz, got a nice win as well. 5th round TKO, was it?
He'll be on the next episode.
Knockout.
People don't even go and take a notice. That guy's not a fluke. When he hits you, you fall.
Yeah, I had the video pulled up. I don't have it pulled up right now, but he broke that dude. He made that dude quit.
And that guy never been stopped either.
Yeah,
it's like they finding some bums. They're trying to test him.
Well, I mean, you like to talk about the age gaps and everything like that. The dude he fought was 15 years older than Virgil, so that is one thing.
Everybody talk about age though, except when it involves Canelo, but that ain't none of my business.
That's what I'm saying. You always like to talk about age, but yeah. Shout out to Virgil Ortiz. Hopefully, we get to get him on here very soon and talk about all that.
But all in all, you got people like Tim Bradley talking crazy. Y'all guys from BBC need to fight. This the best welterweight in the world. How you the best welterweight in the world and you ain't fighting other top 5 people in the same weight class? How you just magically get anointed? Hey, I like you. You're the best welterweight in the world. Go somewhere. Then the day these dudes got to fight, but you posturing and you supposed to know the boxing politics is not going to do no good. And full disclosure, for y'all people that don't really keep up with boxing, Timothy Bradley was Earl Spence mandatory when he was a champion and he walked away from the sport. So that's how much smoke he want from PBC. He wants to put Terrence Crawford out there to do something he would do. But hey, I just call it like I see it. That's fact. That's not conjecture.
Moving on, combat sports. Let's flip over from boxing to MMA and UFC 245.
I was watching it. I was watching on the train. I watched it in the train. I watched it on the subway, and I watched it in the arena last night. So I caught everything except for Faber getting knocked out live, and I did not see none of the Max fight. So I missed some big places on the card, but I got to see Amanda Nunes, and I got to see Kobe and Usman.
All right, so let's start at the top, the top of the card. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington.
I should have stopped it then.
The lights, the sun was brighter. The birds were singing such a beautiful tune this morning. As Kamaru Usman took care of business and finished Colby Covington in the 5th round.
You think they should have stopped it?
Yeah. Yes, he was done.
It was no different than Amanda Nunes. They didn't stop. Amanda Nunes had Jermaine way more hurt in that first round. They didn't stop it.
I completely disagree.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here we are, as we can see here, with the little clip that UFC has given us on Twitter.
Yeah, Jermaine wouldn't have been able to stand like you saw. How she stumbled back to her cage, back to her seat after the first round.
It was a fantastic stoppage by Mark Goddard. There was only 50 seconds left. Regardless if it was stopped or not, he was going to get railed on for the next 50 seconds. So even if he made it to the final bell, it was still a 10-8 round. Kamaru and still one way or the other. People upset at the stoppage need to sit down somewhere. Kamaru, I've seen way more damage on that card alone. That's all I'm saying. I could carry either way. He wasn't gonna win the fight. But this whole narrative that he did this for America. I'm glad the manga gimmick didn't win. Why does it? Like that? I don't understand. At the end of the day, you want to see 2 people when a title fight show up, show out, and fight their ass off. That's what he did. So all the other stuff is all in between, and that's why MMA is not considered a real sport in some people's eyes. Like you got people getting all into stuff that has nothing to do with what happened in the motherfucking octagon. That's it. So if he would have did that, got knocked out in the first round, would it have been any different? So are you completely dismissing the fact that Colby Covington put on this whole facade of being
if it's not real, why would get mad about it? Like that's like somebody
because that makes it worse. That's like somebody calling you a name that has nothing to do with you. That makes it worse that he did it because he found a way to put on this facade of being a MAGA Trump supporter because he thought it would make him more money. So he's doing this for money, which is even worse if you ask me, because that's not who you are. So you came up with the idea that, hey, it's better for me to act like I'm a guy who aligns himself with white supremacists and the white supremacist movement and what they're trying to do in this government. And yet somehow when he gets his ass beat in the fight, I've seen this has been the narrative on Twitter today, all day on Twitter. Somehow, because Colby got his ass beat, we're supposed to completely dismiss all that. Like, all that's just supposed to go out the window. Like, all the things Colby Covington said, making fun of Glenn Robinson, talking about people that are dead, talking about Matt Hughes and, hope the train runs over you and all this other bullshit, calling a whole country race of Brazilians filthy animals, like in their arena, in their home arena, which kicked off this whole thing, by the way. This whole Colby MAGA gimmick. Like, no, like that is part of it. So if you base your whole character, this whole gimmick, around being a loudmouth, brash, borderline, outright racist persona, do not get mad when you get your ass beat and people come at you about doing it. That is part of the story, and that cannot be dismissed in any way, shape, or form. I'm
not dismissing it, but that's what you were just saying. It's not that as big a deal.
It's a very big deal.
You too don't have to watch. You got up in arms. You can sit there and keep on. You don't have to watch. He didn't make you watch. And that puts a bigger spotlight on the academic MMA. He sold his soul for money, but look what they got to do. Like, more people know Colby Covington than Teofimo Lopez, but Teofimo Lopez's bank account is bigger than Colby Covington's. That's why you got to resort to that stuff, man. Trying to make his money. I don't. It's not the best way. I wouldn't do it, but I'm not gonna hate on him for doing it either. Because if they were getting paid the wages that they got in boxing, we wouldn't have people like this in the sport, or they'd be very, very minimal. But
I don't even know how to respond right now. I really don't. So Colby got his ass beat. Good on Kamaru. Thank you, Kamaru, for getting the job done.
Why can't you respond? I don't get why a lot of people get all up in arms unless, but if the same situation in real life happened, if it don't affect them, it really didn't happen, or I'm not gonna really be as outlandish or disappointed or whatever you want to call it, because it affect them. First time affect them, then you get the real talk. People are not consistent across the board in general. So it's like, well, I'm going to get upset. At the end of the day, it's all about what happened in that cage. So had he won or whatever, what, you would have been sad, or people been sad? Like what?
Yes, because you know what would have happened if Colby won, because we know this for a fact, because if you've been on Twitter and read all the comments that have come out on Twitter, had Colby won, all we would have seen on social media, MAGA this, MAGA that.
I like the people that you, they're MMA fans. Well, I'm gonna get mad about people that I just know I'm smarter than. Well, I'm gonna get upset with them. That's like getting upset when somebody's call you out your name. So you know it's not true. Well, I'm gonna get mad when I know it's not true. I'm gonna laugh in your face and keep on moving. It's not true.
Are you not invested in the storylines of this sport?
Not really.
Okay. All right. We'll move on then. All right. So in the co-main event, we saw Max
MMA,
Holloway.
Or this WWE.
We saw Colby Covington.
Is this MMA? Or is this WWE?
The lines are blurred. Are you really acting like there's not storylines behind every major fight?
Yeah,
like, are you acting like?
But
are you acting like a Conor McGregor didn't capture people's attention because of his personality and what he does outside of the ring, outside of the octagon?
But people want to have it both ways. And like they had that same intensity, keeping all these lawsuits that he got going on. These people don't got that.
That's part of his story now.
But people don't got that same intensity they had when he was doing all that stuff with.
Yes, they absolutely do.
Over there where he's from.
No, here.
Yeah, over here.
Very much here. Very much here.
Okay, when he come fight in let's say T-Mobile January 18th, I guarantee you it'll be sold out. I guarantee you they have bigger than any card they had this year. So if you feel that upset, you do not have to watch. It does not affect the bottom line. That's why the UFC is laughing at people. They're like, oh, they're going to still watch anyway. Like, you can't, it's a sport. These people fight for a living. We can't have this holier than thou. These people fight for a living. And like I said, these people still going to watch. How much you want to bet they don't sell out that arena? How much you want to bet they don't have no high ass ratings?
Whether it's a sellout or not is irrelevant, because there are people that will not buy those pay-per-views. There are people that did not buy this pay-per-view last night because they don't like how Colby Covington has presented himself.
But that's not the majority, though.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Whether or not that they were doing this, yes, these fights are going to sell out because they're good fights, and the storylines add to it. Yes, there will be people that will not buy it because they don't like Colby Covington's gimmick. There will be people that will buy it just to tune in to see Kamaru kick his ass. So there is a little bit of both sides to that. The difference is when you do something that is unsavory in the eyes of a lot of people, I don't even know the best way to put this. Because
what's the difference between him and Conor, though? Conor's shit was real. His shit was a gimmick. Both of them are shit that you ain't supposed to do, but the people that employed them are not upset. And people are not upset with them. People are like, fuck you, UFC.
The difference is
keep this stuff coming at me.
The difference is, yes, Conor has things going on that has lawsuits behind it. Colby is playing up this gimmick that plays into the racial tensions of this country. So they're very similar in a way, but they are different because there's no court cases for Colby. Whereas Conor has sexual assault allegations that he's playing out, which is a whole nother issue separately. They're both egregious in their own way. So, yeah, you got one guy going out there doing sexual assault things. You got another guy playing on racial lines to garner interest. So, listen, if you go out there and an African immigrant whoops your ass, best believe Twitter is going to be damn happy. Black Twitter is going to be super happy. Super happy when you get your ass beat. I'm raising my hand because that's me. Now let's move on to this co-main event.
He just thought he was the better fighter. I could keep it without the storyline. He just wasn't the better fighter because he's not.
Well, we all knew that. I knew that going in. I knew he wasn't the better fighter. I knew he is a hell of a fighter. I will say that. He's an absolutely an amazing fighter, and he fought most of that fight with a broken jaw.
Why people get your bonus point? That's getting overplayed too. Did you take a cold L or did you take a hot dub? He took a cold L. Why y'all? Well, it's just a valiant effort. No, he took a cold L. Nobody cared. Well, I don't know why they hyping that part up too. That he fought with a broken jaw. That's cool. That's tough man stuff. But what did that get you? A trip to the hospital in Las Vegas.
100%. Yeah.
Well, he might be supposed to give a bonus for that.
I mean, he literally did get a bonus for that, though. Literally did. Fight of the night, 50 G's in his bank account. But co-main, if I can get to that, please, sir. Alexander Volkanovski shocked the world, man, because he absolutely outpointed Max Holloway for 5 rounds. And the crazy thing for me is that I didn't expect this type of game plan. I expected him, if he was going to beat Max, I thought he was going to have to hurt Max and, put him in bad positions, utilize the grappling, get him on the canvas, and while avoiding Max's jiu-jitsu. But that's not what happened. He literally outpointed him with game plan. Like, kind of was like a throwback to like Frankie Edgar when he was in his prime championship run. That's what this fight felt like to me. He was out there just outpointing him and landing hard shots on Max. And Max was still trying to lead the dance, put the pressure on, but he wasn't getting off as much as he wanted to. He's still landing a lot, but the way I scored it, I gave the 4th round to Max. That was the only round I gave to Max Holloway, and that was a close round. One judge gave all 5 rounds to Volkanovski, and that's not crazy.
Yeah, I didn't see the fight. I got to go back and watch it. But I've said this for about Max the last couple of years. Like all getting the awards and being a people's champ and all that only gets you so far.
It gets you to be the best featherweight in the world.
True.
So how much further do you want to go?
But will you be fighting? But will you be fighting at that top level 3 years from today?
I mean, he's already considered to be the best featherweight in the world. So I mean,
but if you're trying to be that guy, you're trying to be that GOAT, you gotta have some longevity.
I just said he's the best featherweight in the world. I mean,
no, he was.
I mean, they're going to do a rematch, so we'll see if he gets his belt back. I mean, hey, kind of hard to argue. Amanda Nunes in the fight before that, and still, Jermaine brought a much better game plan into this fight than she did the first one. Obviously, in their first matchup, she got starched.
Seen the first fight?
Yes, many people have seen the first fight. It was in the UFC. Fight for the Troops, I believe. It was the card. But yeah, Jermaine got absolutely starched in that first one.
She could have easily got stopped.
But this time around, she was a little bit better off her back. She was able to control Amanda. The issue for me was that Jermaine was not able to get up off of her back. I mean, that was the thing. She was better at controlling what Amanda was trying to do, but at the same time, you can only do that for so long before you have to actually do something to get off the canvas. And this is what most of the fight looked like, with Amanda on top, raining down, ground and pound. Jermaine had some fantastic up kicks, one of which severely rocked Amanda. Like, you could see the legs buckle when she got her with that up kick, but Amanda did really well to work with that and then continued that top pressure.
Well, Amanda Nunes showed why, like, not only that she's the GOAT, but about the evolution of the sport, that she's a mixed martial artist. Because in the striking game, you would think Amanda Nunes is usually, quote unquote, gets a check by the striking when they do the breakdowns. But Jermaine showed they close that cage off real quick quite a few times yesterday. As a result, Amanda Nunes like, no, we're not going to play this game. We're going to get your ass down on this ground and see what's up. And once she did that, she had her in her world. I don't know why people are booing her. She did what she had to do. You ain't going to be able to knock out everybody.
People were...
She did what she had to do, because had she straight up trained with her, the odds of Amanda Nunes losing those belts went up.
Yeah, and this was Jermaine randomly catching Amanda in a triangle that wasn't really a triangle. I mean, it was a triangle, but it wasn't locked in all the way. That was crazy that she just happened to roll into that. But yeah, credit to Jermaine. She fought her ass off for what she could do, but it just wasn't enough, man. Just wasn't enough. She's clearly the more technical striker than Amanda, but the problem is, just mixed martial arts, you got to be able to do everything, and that's what Amanda could lean on, was that wrestling and that jiu-jitsu.
But
and that
back to what I said, though, Jermaine should have had a little bit more dog. She should have made more of a fight, and then try to control spots and stuff. You got to make these people, like, she had it uncomfortable on the ground. When we see Amanda Nunes uncomfortable on the feet that well.
Well, I don't think she was uncomfortable per se. I think she just knew that, hey, I can win the fight on the ground. So why am I going to stand and trade?
When you see her just get question mark kick like she an amateur. She's like, nah, I'm going to go and take this go down. We're not going to play this game.
You don't have to be an amateur to be on the receiving end of a question mark kick. But yeah, it was a good fight.
There you go, right there.
Yeah, there it is. Show it there on YouTube. Yeah, it was a good fight. It was a good fight, but Amanda things. Yeah, this is a question mark kick right there. It's beautiful.
Well, she got a chin, though.
I mean, you're an undefeated Muay Thai kick striker with like 50-something and 0 record. Yeah, you're going to be able to land that kick. But yeah, the fight card itself, man, amazing card through and through. I know you didn't get to see a lot of it, but shout out to
Jeff Neal, friend of the show, knocking people hats off yet again.
100%.
Minute and a half, Mike Perry, who?
Yeah, 100%. Shout out to Jeff Neal getting it done.
I was literally in the back of the Uber. I watched the whole fight. Going back to MSG, I watched Jeff's whole fight.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he made that look really easy. And Mike Perry is a tough dude, and he got him out of there with ease, man. So shout out to him, and shout out to whoever at the post-fight press conference when Dana was up there brought him up, because nobody was talking about Jeff. And then Dana was like, oh yeah, I got to send that guy some money. I'm send that kid some money too, even though he didn't get in a bonus. So shout out to whoever brought up Jeff Neal that put some more money in his bank account by just mentioning his name with Dana in front of cameras. So that was a little something.
So what was your grades for the? Because I know you watch a lot of videos and stuff like that.
For my grade for what?
For the way people covered the whole event and stuff like that.
It was fun. No complaints. People did a good job. A lot of the media members we hang out with, or that I hang out with rather, when at UFC events, yeah, everybody was there. A lot of the folks from Canada came down. Danny Austin even covered the card.
Shout out to Danny. Yeah. Don't be a stranger when we call you, boy. No.
Yeah, better come to Texas too.
Because one thing that I noticed with boxing people, they run with innuendos and rumors. Somebody could have said something. Yeah, he got dropped in sparring. Hey, I heard down this road of the street, they ask these boxers these questions. It's crazy. Or this dumbass notion that it's crazy because he went through adversity last night and he had to show who he was made of. People think like now Terrence Crawford's greater because he went through adversity and had a tough fight. Why do you need to get roughed up or have somebody drop you like old boy did for somebody to just realize how good of a fighter you are? Like, that's the dumbest narrative that's out there. Like, you got to have some kind of adversity to let us know that you're that guy.
Yeah,
that's stupid.
It's like
that MMA is just not as bad. The noise is not as loud. It's really loud in boxing and really annoying. And I said, Terrence is getting hit cool, and he elaborate. Now, none of these people been up in the damn ring. That's what they said. Terrence Crawford's kind of a mean dude. You see why he be busting people's ass in the ring. Like, that dude's him and his team, like, you can tell they fight in the street, like, for real. Mm-hmm. But, like, he agreed with me, too. He's like, Mean Machine's legit. Y'all keep talking like he not. Sure enough, he was legit.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, man, because people like to have this notion that if you can prove
up, so he's got to be good.
Yeah, I mean,
he still won, but he got beat up.
There is something to say about knowing that a guy is hard to get out of a fight, but I don't think that's a necessary thing that we have to see to determines one's greatness, so to speak. Like, yeah, it's nice to know you have a chin and you can take a whole bunch of punishment, but the true greats are the ones that can go out there and take somebody out with precision and not be on the receiving end of a lot of damage. AKA TBE, Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah. And the fight last night, Kamaru and them laid it on the line. He did what he had to do. It's definitely going to take somebody with some skill and toughness to beat that guy. He's gonna be in the mix for a while. But props to him for keeping it real in his press conference. And he shot out Leon Edwards and stuff like, "Hey, bro, I was in your situation. I'll give you a fight just out of respect." He respects the game, which a lot of people don't do, because somebody like Jorge Masvidal, like, yeah, he quote unquote respects the game, but he only respects it when it involves Jorge Masvidal's interests. So you really don't respect the game. If you respect the game, you're looking at it from a whole. Like, what if that was me or something like that? Those people don't do that in MMA, and they want to be talked about. They're a soldier. Or they got high respect for the mixed martial arts. No, you don't. You care about your own angle, which is cool. Every man for themselves, but don't try to affect the funk. That's what somebody like Jorge does.
Yeah. I mean, of course, yeah. There's a lot of guys that are gonna obviously do what they can to make sure that they got their money coming in their pockets, and whether that be putting on gimmicks or whatever have you. Yeah, that's unfortunately that's always going to be a part of it. If they got paid
what they were worth, they wouldn't have that problem. So that's why I don't get mad, regardless of how stupid it is. I know why they're doing it, because you don't see that in boxing. Yeah,
I don't care. Checks. I don't care if I don't care. You don't see that
in boxing for a reason, because they get them checks.
I don't care. I don't care if it's fake. You don't go out there and act like you're a fucking racist, because once you get your ass beat, I'm going to celebrate that.
I'm about to tell you that to celebrate, but I'm like, why are you so charged up?
I guess racism doesn't bother you. Like, I guess that's the conclusion we've arrived at on this show right now.
No, it's not about that. See, here go HKO, because two couple of things. I can separate reality and fiction, and then another thing, somebody say something I know it's not true. Why am I gonna get upset? I'm just laughing in their face. I'm gonna get upset about something that's not true. And more importantly, I look at things on a whole. Unlike a lot of people in our community, oh, it affects me. What's up with it? Gangster side come out. It affect them. I don't see that. That's never happened to me. Because it's not affecting you, that don't mean they don't exist. That's what's wrong with our community. That's fact. So it's a lot more deeper than that. For me, I just don't outwardly express it like you, but I'm actually more intense about it, because people pick and choose in our community when it comes to that type of stuff based on if it affects them directly, still keeping it 100% across the board.
I'm not sure I understand where you're going with that.
People in the black community, if they're saying something like, I was in there telling you, this is what I see, this is what I have to deal with. Well, because they don't see that, it doesn't affect them. That's not that big a deal. I don't see that. I can be them. They can do something. I do when I do it to Susie. She doesn't do that to me. That doesn't mean that it's not true. That just means how she did with you. That's what a lot of people sit there and say. So why would we be up in arms about something that's not real? And that's reality is why, whereas racism as a whole affects everybody, but I'm only going to comment when it affects me.
That sounds more like an individual issue than...
I don't have no issue. That's real talk. That's the thing. It's not an issue. That's real. That's real.
I'm saying the situation you're describing sounds more like an individual issue versus a blanket belief of racism.
I'm just stop. It's a lot more deeper. I can say it's not this whole Kobe thing. I'm talking about like black community as a whole, like people in general. For example, as you know, I go all over LA, Vegas, New York, whatever. There's several black people in the media in Dallas. When I first started doing all this stuff, they basically laughed, ha ha ha, you ain't gonna do shit. 4 years later, who sucks now, you silly bastards? But back to my point. I get more love from people in Vegas, LA, New York than I do these same people here in Dallas. What are the odds that people that look like me hate on me the most? I used to get mad about it. I just laugh about it now. You hate on me because you know me. Because 3-4 years ago, you said I wasn't going to do shit. I wasn't about shit. Now I'm doing something. You think you all that. So which one is it? So what are the common denominator? Those people that be hating look like us. That's real.
No, I will agree that there is a lot of...
He's not one of them, though.
No, there's a lot of that goes on. I've experienced.
And I'm talking about the black community in general. So it's like, well, I'm getting mad at this dude that's a phony that I knew he was gonna lose too. It wasn't supposed to be what happened. I actually thought it was gonna happen the third round. If I was gonna go put money on Vegas, I would put third round TKO stoppage, similar to the way it ended.
No, I mean to that last point, there is a lot of black people holding other black people down. That does happen quite a bit.
Or like other people, not you, on Twitter that are outspoken and they look like this site should be part of Black History Month when it's kind of like another thing that's in general that props to the fighters for UFC for them not to be as on page. They didn't really have this much of a hating. A lot of people in black society, when it comes to this sports in general, look like there's not enough pie for somebody, like because they're black. Like for instance, there's certain reporters in boxing in particular, they get on with a particular outlet. Don't hire the other person, like, that's going to cut into their money because there's another black person. Like, that's crazy to me. There's people that do that. I have a relative that acts that way. He'd rather be the only minority in the group and get all the attention. Somebody else come that happen to look like him. He looks at that person as an obstacle or as a threat when it shouldn't be that way. So there's a lot more to it than just black and white and all this stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. That's real versus like this dude with a gimmick that's just doing something, get your blood pressure boiling so he get his ass beat on national TV and you can laugh at him.
Damn right. And every time it happens, I am going to celebrate it. So we're going to leave you guys with this.
Y'all had some HKOs for y'all.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about them. We're going to leave you guys with this because I want to play this because this was Kamaru at the post-fight interview. Hit the subscribe button. We're going to get you to these interviews. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that merch link. Buy yourself a hoodie, a t-shirt as well. Support the show. We would appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to play this audio right here from Kamaru last night. And then we're going to get to the interviews. All right, so enjoy this.
What you talking about? They was chanting USA for me. Let's be honest. I've said it time and time again. I'm more American than him. You know, I am what it means to be an American. You know, I'm an immigrant that come here and work my ass off tirelessly to get to the top, and I'm still prevailing. And so that's what it means to be an American. It's not necessarily, just because you're born here, you feel privileged is what it means to be an American. No, I told you, none of these guys work harder than me. That's what it means to be an American. I work my ass off, and I'm going to continue to work my ass off. And obviously with good integrity. I don't have to walk around like a punk and say certain things and abuse the whole country or abuse the whole world and talk about people and religions and things like that. I don't have to, you know. I'm going to walk with integrity because at the end of the day, I want everyone that's watching me, every eye that's on me to look at me and say, you know what, that's what we want to be. That's the example that we like. And so, you know, I'm more American than him. So when they were chanting USA, you damn sure better believe that was because of me.
Please Please welcome to the Slip and Dip podcast, making a Slip and Dip debut. UFC bantamweight contender, fresh off a controversial draw at UFC DC, Mr. Cody Stamann. Is it still bothering you a week later, man? The fact that it's like you can legitimately say that the judges took it from you because majority of people had you winning.
I mean, I think it'll probably bother me the rest of my life, but I mean, at this point, I'm already looking at who's next. I think the UFC's by the names that I've gotten, I'm guessing the UFC kind of saw it as a win. I think in short term it sucks. Long term, I don't think it's gonna make a damn difference. I'm still gonna get my money and I'm still gonna keep kicking ass. So who cares?
So what you learn about that fight? Is there anything that you learn for future fights that to apply, or each fight individually differently?
The cliche, don't leave it to the judges, right? There's so much to learn. We could sit here and talk for 20 minutes about what I learned. I learned that I need to be more aggressive. I need to be looking for the finish more. And I need to know how much time is left on the clock, because I think if I would have known that I was running out of time in that third round, I could have finished him.
Yeah. So how do you process a draw, man? Because we've talked with fighters all the time. That obviously we know what a win feels like, we know what a loss feels like, but a draw, how do you process that? Because it's like you don't win, you don't lose. Like your record isn't necessarily worse off. I mean, it's kind of just like.
Yeah, dude, if somebody knows, I want them to talk to me and tell me, because I have absolutely no idea. I don't really know. How to think or what to think about it. I guess the only thing I want to do is I want to get back in the cage and just put all this shit behind me. I think that's just the best thing I can do is get right back into the gym, right back into training camp. I mean, you can see I don't even have, I've got like a little bit of a black eye, and that's about it. As far as any of the injuries I got in that fight, I took absolutely no damage. So, I'd be ready to get back in there. As soon as February, so we'll see what happens.
So what do you think about the state of your division? You got, of course, a double champion, Cejudo, a former champion, Cody Garbrandt ahead of you. You got Peter Yan, who's knocking out everybody. Did my man favorite dirty last night. People can say they beat him, but nobody can say they done that to him. And then Aljamain, I'm pretty sure you want to run that back. So you got a lot of interesting people ahead of you. So what's your take on your division? What do you think you stack up in all that craziness?
Well, there's no short of really, really tough guys at 135. I think right now it's the deepest division in MMA. And as far as where I stack up, I think on a good night I could beat any of those guys, anyone you just talked about. It's just about putting the right game plan together and executing it and go on and winning. Song Yadong was a guy that was starching everyone. I mean, he had one of the nastiest knockouts I've ever seen in my life against a former opponent. And before that, he actually, I didn't see anyone hit him. Like no one even contested him. He's, 4-5-0 in the UFC. So I just derailed that train. And I've done it before, and I'll do it again. My only blemish is the number one contender, Aljamain Sterling. And he had 10 UFC fights. I had 3. I just need the experience. I need that in UFC experience, and I think I can whoop all these guys, honestly. I mean, and I think I can get paid a lot of money to do it too. So I'm excited for what's coming in the next couple of years.
Does it bother you that they have your name tied up to like somebody Rod Fawn or Jimmy Rivera? They don't have your name tied up to Moraes or a rematch with Aljo or someone like Corey Sandhagen or Peter Yan? Just like one of those things, like you keep doing what you do, all that stuff's gonna come. Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. It's like the same thing with the straw thing. Short term. You want respect. You want all these things in the game, but you gotta go out there and earn it. And I'm gonna earn that top spot. That's that. I just know that. I know that I can beat these guys. I just need the opportunities to do it. And I think 2020 is going to be a big year for me. I just got to stay healthy and stay on the grind, stay after these guys. There's a lot of tough guys, and God, who knows who's coming from, BFE Russia. That's crazy. That's it's some crazy killer that's been trained since he was 5 years old or some shit like that. So I mean, you don't know. I mean, MMA is just it's getting crazy. I just fought like a Shaolin monk. That kid was like a monk when he was a kid. He was a professional athlete at like 12 or 13. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So I'm looking to make a bunch of money and get the hell out of here before these crazy kids start getting old enough to kick my ass.
That's hilarious. Now, I saw you tweeted out last night. You thought Aldo won that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was crazy that he won, made the weight, did it smiling. It didn't seem like apparently whoever his nutritionist is, whatever they need to sell whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
But
I think it's post USADA. He's off the sauce now. He's not as big as he used to be. He's off the sauce, and now he can make 35. That's honest to God what I think. I think he was just juiced to the fucking gills, and now he's not taking steroids anymore. So now he can make weight. I mean,
dang. Okay.
People in the MMA community talk, man. People know. Who's taking steroids because no one can keep their mouth shut about that stuff. People in Brazil, those guys are all taking steroids.
Who's some more people in your division, you think?
What's that?
Who's some more people in your division?
People in my division?
Yeah, that you think that had the Aldo syndrome.
The sauce?
What's that? Yeah. I mean, at Dillashaw for sure. TJ's been taking. He just got busted. He's been taking steroids his whole MMA career. His whole career, he's been taking all kinds of stuff, and it's sad because he built a legacy and made a bunch of money on it, and he did it all as a shit sport. I mean, that's a fight I would love. When he comes back, we'll see what TJ off the sauce can do. I don't think he's going to be the same killer he was, but I don't know. I can't speak on. Those are really the only guys. I mean, all the other guys I can think of that are in the top 10 right now are all pretty honest. They're not the kind of guys that would be doing stuff like that, and you're gonna get caught. You're gonna get caught. You're gonna get outed, and then it's gonna taint your legacy. You're gonna be freaking Barry Bonds, and everyone's gonna be like, "Well, if he wouldn't have taken steroids, he wouldn't have hit all those home runs." But I mean, like TJ did hit some home runs.
Yeah,
but in hindsight, though, if you know that you're gonna have the same career TJ's had and make the amount of money, would you take it though? Just like somebody coming into the sport, hey, people gonna talk noise about you, but you gonna make millions of dollars. You are gonna have a belt and a cute wife. Hey,
I mean, I'm gonna have a belt and a hot wife without the EPO and the shit that TJ had to take. I'm just a bigger man than he is. I wouldn't because you gotta look at your kids and your family and all these people that care and love you, and you gotta tell them like, hey, I'm a cheater. I cheated my way here. And it sounds great, but I mean, you can't run away from the shit you do on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I know TJ is depressed and hurting because being a loser like that. I mean. And being a cheater, I mean, you got to look yourself in the mirror every day. You got to live with that shit. I couldn't do it.
How many times do you think you're going to see you in the octagon in 2020?
What's that?
How many times do you think you will see you in the octagon? If you had your way, how many times will you be up in there?
How many times? Man, as many times as I can. The more you fight, the more checks you get, right? Ideally, if it's 3 fights. The last couple of years, I've only gotten 2 fights a year. Just because of injuries, things have slowed me down, and maybe not getting the right matchups or having a hard time getting the right matchups. But I'm in a spot right now. There's so many, like I said, there's so many killers at 135. I don't think I'm gonna have a hard time. I think I could fight every 2 months if I wanted to, and then if I stay healthy and stay ready, I mean, I could fight 5 times this year. Just keep signing the check. Uncle Dana.
100%. Now, let me, I guess, finish asking the second part of my question I was trying to get to. With Aldo, obviously, you thought he won. A lot of people thought he won that fight. And then after the fact, Dana even says in the post-fight thing, he was like, hey, since Cejudo called him out, I'm not mad at that idea. Coming off a loss, that's kind of crazy. But it's like you guys are kind of in a similar position that you guys didn't walk away with the win, but it's it's being not viewed as a loss in any way. So what do you make of that? And I guess how Dana even said he didn't, hate the idea of him fighting Cejudo.
Well, I think it was good of Dana to come out and say that. If any fight could have been a draw, it could have been that one. Depending on what you're watching. But I thought Aldo edged him out, in the second, third round. But it was a really close fight. Obviously Dana saw it a different way. I guess like with a name like Aldo, that fight makes sense against Cejudo. As far as like name value goes, I think that's the biggest fight that he could make. So I think, they're looking at like dollar signs. That's a good fight to make. But man, Henry Cejudo, man, what a dork. That guy, my God, that stupid video. I was watching it. I'm like, this is the dude representing our division. All the people that we have, you know what I mean? Like, and I got a lot of respect for a lot of the guys at 135, and then you got this dork, Henry Cejudo, who's just a fucking weirdo from top to bottom. He's the guy that's representing us, and I'm just like, man, we got to get this dude out of here. So, whether it's Aldo, whether it's Aljo, I don't care. Someone just needs to beat his ass and get him out, because, I can't stand that guy.
Is he doing the most for you, man?
Dude, he's just a weirdo. He's like, I see him all the time, and like, he's a weirdo in person too. He talks about himself in the third person. He's just living in a different reality. I don't even know where that dude's head's at.
At least his personality is, it's just goofy, versus somebody else.
You're right. It's not malicious.
Yeah,
it's not malicious. He's not like saying bad things about people's moms and stuff.
Right.
It's not malicious, but yeah, it's just a freaking weirdo. I don't like that. I don't like cringy stuff, man. It's really not. It's not
yeah, it's definitely uncomfortable. It definitely makes you feel awkward. Like, is this really saying this?
Like, why am I watching this? This is messed up.
Exactly. We'll let you go out of there because you kind of hit on like people saying personal stuff. At the end of the day, if somebody says personal stuff, as you as a man to take care of that, because it's like some people about that life and some people not. And then you got the character stuff. To me, that's all. To me, people eat up. They talk about it because they're interested in it. But at the end of the day, you got to sign that check and you got to cash it. So why the up in arms as a fighter? Do you think people should be all up in arms and all that stuff at the end of the day? Because it all going to get settled in the octagon. Like Dana say, you got to fight on Saturday night.
Well, my thing is, like, you say whatever you want. You can call me ugly. You can call me fat. You can call me. I don't give a shit what you say to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's the fight game. Like, I got thick skin. I know how this works. You can hate all you want about who I am and my fighting, but you say something about my family or somebody I care about, I will punch you in the back of the head in the fucking back room, or I will hit you with a board. Like, we're past getting an MMA fight. That, like, you don't need to do that shit. Like, when Khabib went after Conor for saying that shit about his dad, like, I wasn't even a fan of Khabib, and now, like, he might be my absolute favorite fighter, because it's like, that's the kind of gangster shit that we need. Like, guys shouldn't be able to get. There's a lot of like great examples, of guys that could hype fights and talk shit, and they could do it in a way that you didn't have to throw someone's mom under the bus or say something negative about someone's religion or their background and their upbringing. Stuff like that, man. There's got to be a line. There's got to be a level of professionalism. Like, you can sell a fight. You could be Henry Cejudo, you know what I mean? You can be Cejudo and freaking, be a weirdo like that. And I think that's better than being McGregor and talking about someone's family, So, I think there's a line. There's got to be a hard line, and the UFC needs to reinforce that. If there's one thing I would say about the UFC that I dislike, it's that they let people say stuff about other people's families, and I think that you should get fined for it. You know what I mean? I think there should be a line. There's got to be a line somewhere, and I think that's where the line needs to be.
Yeah, like a code of conduct type of thing
that
you see in other sports. Yeah, I like exactly. That idea.
Say you do whatever the hell you want, but like leave people's personal lives out of that shit.
Yeah, definitely. Because hell, in like guys in the NBA, for example, or in NFL, if they say anything about the refs, they get fined.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but they talk about each other though. There's no fine or nothing like that.
Well, obviously, yeah, it's different. It's different.
Yeah, but
They compete
they
against
don't.
each other. Like they're competing with other fighters. The players are competing against each other. So how's it different? It's just that they're not fighting. They're still competing against each other.
But how often do you see in other sports players talk about others' families?
You don't see NBA Twitter in the summertime. They changed it up in the summertime.
I guess not.
Why would the season with NBA Twitter is the cool? You can just keep yourself entertained watching the storylines that go off in the summertime between NBA players.
I guess.
Would you walk up on somebody and somebody said something personal? Like one thing I trip out is like when you see people like at the weigh-ins, and they walk off like can touch you. Nobody does anything. Like, well, you just went to fight like 30 seconds ago? I always think that's the craziest thing. And the security people be right there not paying them no attention. So it's not like someone's ready to jump in case something happens. That trips me out when that happens like that. It just makes it seem like it's staged. I know it's not. So it's kind of like, I got to do this for the fans. And then outside, well, I'll just wait till Saturday to take care of all this.
You see a lot of fake beef. You see a lot of fake beef. You see guys, you know what I mean? You see these guys they'll be at the PI together and like online they'll be hating each other, but then they'll walk by each other and they won't even pay attention to each other. You know what I mean? But online they're saying they're chirping, but it's like I said, they're just selling a fight. They're hyping a fight. It's not actually personal. Like all the stuff with me and Aljo, like we were talking crap about each other, but after the fight, I was like, hey, I was just trying to sell a fight. And he was like, yeah, me too, man. Best of luck in the future. And I got a lot of respect for the guy. There was never anything. It was never personal. And I think that's the way it really, really should be, because, dude, listen, we're going to get in a fight. You know what I mean? What can I really say to you? What's the point? I mean, outside of like selling tickets, you know what I mean? Like, I don't actually dislike you. You know what I mean? I just gotta kick your ass. You know what I mean? I got to kick your ass in the cage. So, I mean, we're not going to be friends, but, at the end of the day, like, I don't really give a shit about you. Like, I don't even, it's not, I don't care. I don't like you or dislike you. I just got to hurt you when we get locked in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it ended, man. Yeah. Hey, you moved up in my favorite fighters. You're a real one, Cody. I appreciate that. We like having real ones on our show.
100%. 100%. Yeah, we got to get you back on when we got more time. We're kind of pressed for time tonight, but we appreciate you hopping on with us and giving us the breakdown, man.
Of course. Yeah, I had fun. Yeah, we'll do it again. You guys should let me know.
Absolutely. We look forward to your upcoming 2020 and continued success, my man. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Please welcome to the Slip and Dip podcast, Tracey Trudeau. She has a PhD in educational psychology. She is an advocate for mental health. And most importantly, I think, to all of our listeners, she loves mixed martial arts and combat sports and has quite a history of working with some athletes and people that we know in the business, including names like Robin Black and so many others. Tracey, please let the folks know a little bit more if I didn't butcher that intro. Not for you.
I've been behind the scenes with mixed martial arts probably since the early 2000s, and tend to be avoidant of interviews because I really prefer to be supporting people and their success. I have, full disclosure, I have no supplements to sell. I have no consulting business to push. I am a person who likes to do a fair bit of volunteer work and pro bono work with fighters and coaches. And whenever I have a chance, love to talk about mixed martial arts and both the benefits and challenges of athletes who have mental health and mental wellness considerations in their journey along with their physical health and wellness. I guess vitality that allows them to perform and be their best. So I'm here to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, answer some questions, dive into some deep stuff if you'd like to.
Do you think the UFC should have people like you on their staff at the PI full time, or do you think would it be an investment for somebody? Because, for example, last night Kamaru Usman, I saw about 75% of the fight, and I glanced at his post game. He's talking about post fight. Basically, how reason he's a champion is, yeah, he's better than 95% of people on this earth, but nobody's better than him mentally. you have to be a mental champion and a physical champion. He was quick to point that out last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak to all the staffing on of the UFCPI. I've never been there.
Should they hire you? Not do they hire you?
Should they? So let's dive into your question, because you've actually asked a couple of really important things. First of all, I think that the topic of mental health, mental wellness, both on a continuum, because mental health is like physical health. You're on a continuum from wellness all the way to illness, right? And anyone at any time, both athletes and non-athletes, fighters and the average person, can be on any part of that continuum throughout our lifetime. Think about how many times that you have been very, very ill, and then also many times that you've been at your physical best. And it's usually has something to do with very good sleep, which we certainly can talk about, your nutrition, your exercise habits, but also about other things that occur in your life, and also the things that happen to you in your just your everyday life, but also in your childhood, things that come suddenly, such as traumas. So all of those things are components of human beings, whether they're fighters or not. So the topic that you're asking about, and that you're asking me specifically about, athlete wellness programs, whether it be at the Performance Institute for UFC or the NBA or other places like that, are about getting past a couple of things. Number one is that athlete mental health and mental illness has to go beyond performance and mental coaching. Performance and mental coaching is one small aspect, very important aspect of that. And then also we need to get specifically past, although it's critically important, conversations around CTE, so chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is very important. I mean, we talk about now subconcussive blows, so meaning you don't need to have concussions. All you need is repeated blows to the head in order to develop that neurodegeneration in that disease. These are really important things, both performance, as well as performance anxiety, as well as concussions. But mental health and wellness of athletes is much more than that. It's anxiety, general anxiety, it's trauma, it's addiction, it's clinical depression, which is not the same thing as being just sad.
Right, 100%.
It's all of these things, right? And these are things that certainly athletes can encounter in their life, whether they're fighting or whether they're not fighting. So it doesn't necessarily have to do about an impending fight or being in a fight camp. It can be just their everyday lives that affect them as human beings, that make them vulnerable to wellness and illness on that mental health spectrum at any time in their life. So in a roundabout way, I guess I'm getting to your answer, Kendrick, and that is that I think that one of the most important things that we can do to begin elevating the conversation and the importance of mental health and wellness at athlete wellness programs anywhere, including the UFC PI, is to make sure that we don't make these conversations or the services or supports for mental health and mental illness separate and other and in the corner. Because one of the consequences of doing that is it's actually stigmatizing. So it actually creates a bit of a stigma or otherness in saying, we want to take care of the whole athlete. We want to make sure that we take care of all the things that affect your performance and all the things that affect your wellness, including your nutrition and your sleep, and making sure that it's customized to the individual needs of a person and an athlete. However, if you don't have that embeddedness of things like mental health screening, of having conversations, having open conversations that are normalizing struggle, but also making it possible for athletes to talk about clinical levels of depression or sleep disorders or traumas or things that affect them, obsessive compulsive disorder. GSP at one point talked about perceiving that he had these symptoms or symptoms similar to that. If we don't create environments where that's embedded in the overall, I guess, milieu of what performance and wellness and services are for athletes, then it's inadvertently stigmatizing. Okay. So I guess, yeah, does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that we had you on this show. A boxer guy last night, he won his first title at 22 years old named Teofimo Lopez. It was a big deal. He got married earlier this year, had just met the lady he married like 6 months before that. and he's a Honduran and Puerto Rican, and his mom and sister didn't like the wife so much that they got married right before his last fight. That the dad and him, the dad's the trainer, were worried about his sister fighting jumping basically the wife, and it affected his performance. And then they went on for their honeymoon after the fight, and then he had a mental breakdown. And he's talking about how his wife pushed him to go to therapy and stuff, and how this week he was just a new person. And he kept talking about, I'm already a champion. I just don't got a belt. And you can tell he's been in the therapy and he was really living that life. And last night, he knocked him through that second round. Nobody saw coming. A lot of people had him winning, but nobody had him winning like what he did. But he kept talking about how this is for himself to prove to himself, because he knew how great he was. He's only 22. He's a champion of the world boxing. But he said the mental game really helped him get through this. It wasn't about physical with the guy.
Right. And what you just said that's really important, Kendrick, is that he had a personal issue that arose in his life that necessitated him to at some point say, whoa, I'm not okay. I'm not coping well. And it can be almost any kind of a crisis that comes to a peak. And during those kinds of situations, you have likely very high levels of stress. Your anxiety and your cortisol, which is the stress hormone, is elevated very high. You're probably not sleeping well. You might be either skipping meals, or some people, I'm not saying this at all for this particular athlete, but some people cope, with increased alcohol use or sometimes harder drugs. And so whatever they're doing is coming to a bit of a crisis point. And that crisis point for him was the pivot for him to say, I need to learn some coping techniques so that I can either learn to negotiate or even help get myself out of those situations earlier, and or use them in broader areas of his life. And so what he had is a generalization of a skill that he learned, which is actually psychological resilience, and he can apply that in any area of his life. So that is absolutely what I call insurance for the future. And there's a few coaches specifically also in the amateur area who are connecting in with youth young, and specifically around combat sports and MMA, and they are teaching psychological resilience and mental health awareness and mental health literacy very early in their amateur training and at a community level. Someone who's doing that incredibly well is a man named Danny Core. Have you heard of Danny Core?
No.
Never heard of it.
I want everybody to who listens or hears this podcast at some point to just type in Dan, DANNYCORR. He is on Twitter and on Instagram, and he has a program he is running in Belfast in Northern Ireland that has local council community funding and along with educational tutoring such as English and math that brings together youth who are at risk of paramilitary involvement, poverty, mental health issues, and he has an entire wraparound community program. He actually has some data that he collected through a pilot program. I've been following this work for a couple of years now. Man, this guy has got it right. And he is the future. He's connected with IMAF, which is the, IMAF, so IMAF, IMMAF.org. And so some of the information around his pilot called Fight to Unite is on that website. Incredible. So when you can embed that kind of resiliency, as you've described in this boxer, Kendrick, very early on, that's actually preventative. Right. And so that's actually exactly why I got invested and interested in initially traditional martial arts and then MMA, is because when I was working frontline mental health in schools, I worked in 103 schools in 2 provinces in Canada in over a 15-year time period. And so as you can imagine, I came in contact with many, many youth. I came in contact with a handful of them who were at risk for serious mental health issues because of childhood trauma, some abuse, families where there was addiction issues, or just simply prior mental health issues such as anxiety or clinical depression. And the ones who were embedded into and were connected into traditional martial arts like Taekwondo and karate and jiu-jitsu and wrestling at young ages, and it really clicked for them, it was immediately apparent that their mental health and well-being began to improve and the resiliency improved. And I began to see connection in these things. And two of the young people who I worked with in high school went on to be pros in MMA. One had a shorter term career, another one had a longer term career. I won't name them because that would violate their privacy. But I immediately saw the benefit in supporting this work. And that was in the early to mid 2000s. And I've been behind the scenes ever since because I see the value in helping young people, especially those who have had trauma, physical or sexual abuse, been exposed to domestic violence, or had mental health or addiction issues themselves, when they are embedded in and really have the trust and mentorship of a good coach and supportive peers. Not only do they improve, but they absolutely are in a position to then give back to their communities and to be well. And so I just thought, I need to support this. And so I've been involved ever since, and been absolutely blessed to serve and provide service through that way, in any way that I can.
It's amazing. That's amazing. One of the things I saw that kind of concerned me this week in terms of mental health, there was actually a couple of positive things. Kendrick kind of touched on it earlier with Kamaru Usman, when they did the athlete panel instead of the open workouts this week during fight week. One of the questions, or Kamaru answered one of the questions, I forget what the question was, but he was going into him making sure that his body was right and his mind was right before he wanted to step into another fight camp. He wasn't, the type of guy to just say, yeah, I'm ready to go again. No, I need some time to relax, unwind, make sure my mental is right before I jump into another fight camp. So that was one of the good things that I heard in terms of mental health conversation this week. But I also saw on Twitter from another fighter that I won't mention, but it's an up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. And the question or something was posed to this person about, was there a concern about CTE? And the response was, what is that? And that concerned me greatly. The fact that you are a fighter at the highest level, in the biggest promotion in the world, you don't know what CTE is, that is a red flag for me in all sorts of things. So that tells me, one, nobody's ever had this conversation with you before. And two, you're getting punched in the face for a living. So there's a very big disconnect right there. And I think that kind of speaks, again, to Kendrick's earlier point. Where are these conversations being had? Like, why is this not part of protocol, whether it be from the UFC's point or, I don't know, some other committee, I guess, that should exist or something for these fighters?
That's a really good question. I guess I can't speak for leagues or organization, whether it be in combat sports or, like kickboxing, like Glory, or in the NBA, or even in the NFL or in the CFL in Canada. Certainly the NFL, I know, has research that is going on right now around that work. I think it's part of a bigger conversation. CTE has to be part of any conversation and awareness at some point. It may be that he doesn't know the term, or maybe he does know the term and chose not to acknowledge it. We don't know. I guess there is probably a need for everyone to be highly aware of what they do. It's a calculated risk, but there's so many things that human beings do that are calculated risks, that I guess for some people, the threshold of risk is lower or higher than someone else's. I am equally concerned about other things that people do, such as, use alcohol or hard drugs to cope and not seek out help. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned when people have suicidal feelings that have nothing to do with head trauma or blows, and they chose to keep it to themselves because they're too stigmatized to ask for help, or they're called weak, or they should suck it up, or other things that happen that discourage people from acknowledging what they are going through and seeking help. That disturbs me too. And I also am, I guess, concerned about the lack of permission that we have to talk about prior traumas. There are some people who we know who have been very open and vocal, who talk about these things. And someone who comes to mind immediately for me is Jared Gordon. He's talked about a history of abuse, and his the way he coped was to use drugs and heavy use of alcohol. And when people have the courage to talk about their experiences and to be really transparent about the difficulties in the recovery, what that provides is a verbal roadmap of hope. And so back to the comment that you've made, Matthew, around CTE, when people talk openly about that as being a risk and being aware of the risk, and doing their best to consider that and to mitigate that, and knowing when it's probably appropriate to either, talk about, upping, brain scans or the frequency of brain scans, or having conversations about heightened screening. I'm thinking about Safe MMA in the UK have really done a very good job at really heightening that, the conversation. I think that they're global leaders. Mark Goddard is part of, I believe, part of Safe MMA in the UK, the ref, Mark Goddard. I would maybe connect in with some of their work and some of their leadership, because I think that they are talking about it and they're doing some good work around education, and are really, raising the level on making sure that we are aware about what we're talking about here. Even if it's not the terminology, it's the concepts and the concerns. So the more that people are educated around the information, the better that they're enabled to make the best decisions for themselves. Does that resonate with your question, or is an answer, Matthew? Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
This is for me personally. You say you're behind the scenes and you don't take any money or anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to tell you how to run a business or even making a business. Have you ever thought about being attached to people at the top of the sport to be able to spread your message? Like, for prime example, I know a person that went from being just a photographer. He did a lot of stuff with GSP and Anderson Silva when they were at their peak, that he ended up doing a lot of stuff with Ronda Rousey. As a result, he has a way to he's a younger people he mentors that he doesn't even make money. He's what gets off of them making money now in the photography business, because he attached his name to those top things. Can you use that same type of model to be able to spread the word? Because if it worked with her, she worked with Connor or whoever her name, that'll kind of help it out, or that's not part of the equation.
Well, I guess
it has a bigger spotlight. I know everybody has their own mental thing, but would you think that would shine the spotlight on it?
Right, absolutely. I guess the way I think is probably more powerful and probably more genuine to do this kind of work, which is advancing the conversations, is to support fighters and coaches to do that. So is to help them tell their story in a way that makes sense, is to help educate them. And over the last probably close to 15 years, occasionally coaches and fighters, and it's completely through word of mouth, will reach out to me behind the scenes for information and or tips around how to tell their story, how to connect it to information or research. I get a lot of contact from coaches just around their what do they do when they're in that situation? So I guess I'm enabling other people to tell their stories. I have occasionally done talks, but I really don't want it to be about me. I'd rather it to be about the message. And I am full-time in corporate healthcare here in northern Alberta and Canada. And so that really is my full-time work. So I guess I would rather people to elevate their lived experience in a way that makes sense for them. And I'm not connected to the people I'm about to speak about, but I think people who've done a really good job of this are also, Rose Namajunas. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, the Olympic swimmer, has done a really good job in talking about his mental health issues. He may or may not have had people behind the scenes, mental health professionals, to help him tell his story, to talk a little bit more, I guess, around the research side and connect it to his own lived experience. I think people who are in the work business, specifically in MMA, when you enable them to talk about it or coaches to talk about it, it resonates more. I was asked when I was invited to come on your podcast, I did make a list of a few things that coaches and fighters have asked me about, but more specifically coaches, and things that are most frequently asked by them that I think are really important, and some things that they could take back and talk with their teams and their fighters and athletes about. And the first is that coaches and trainers are in really unique positions to really advance mental health with their fighters and athlete mental health, and also to be at the front lines of suicide prevention because of their mentorship role, and because they talk to their fighters all the time about their physical performance and their wellness and their sleep and their nutrition and their fight camps anyway. So if you were to add an additional conversational layer to that, it's very powerful and making it comfortable and okay for those athletes and those fighters to come to them in private or quiet moments to talk about if they are struggling. So that's number one, is embedding that conversation. And if a coach or a trainer is not comfortable with the topic of mental health and mental illness, that is going to be picked up on, and that will likely be a barrier for their athletes coming to them. And when they're in an ideal position to really be that informed helper for that person. The most common questions that I've received, and I did write them down so I didn't forget, is what do I do as a coach when a fighter or an athlete approaches me and they're struggling and they're not well and they say, I don't know what to do, coach. I think I need some help. So, or how do I know when my athlete needs help and they're not coming to me, but I'm noticing something's going on? So number one is when an athlete or a fighter's stress level seems to be much higher and they don't seem to be coping. Their normal coping techniques are not working, or they seem to just be declining overall in their well-being. That's number one. And they're just struggling to manage their stress. Number two is an emergence of really unhealthy coping behaviors. And I'm talking about, avoidance behaviors, detaching completely from their peers, detaching from coaching conversations, maybe even from their families or their loved ones or their partners, beginning to use, hard drugs, even sometimes partying hard can be a way of just sort of detaching or escapism a little bit from their stress instead of dealing with it. Number one is, in my books, is their sleep is affected, because as soon as someone gets anxious, or even if there's escalating levels of clinical depression, their sleep is almost inevitably affected. There's not one psychiatric illness, not one psychiatric disorder where sleep is normal. It's always a big red flag. And so sleep education and good sleep hygiene is something to think about. When fighters talk about letting everyone down after a loss, especially, and they're struggling to really bounce back, and they feel incredible burden and incredible guilt around letting everyone around them down, when especially you pair that with hopelessness, and also when there's a presence of chronic pain, those are red flags for suicide risk. And that is something that I'm always aware of and always want to talk to a coach about, is noticing sort of that trifecta of symptoms. And then any obvious signs of panic and clinical depression that really seem to be escalating, and it can be irritability. It also can be a lack of feeling where they're really just quite numb. That can also be a trauma sign as well. Those are the things that coaches need to be really aware of. And if they see a rapid increase of those issues, do not assume that your fighter is going to seek out their own help. I really encourage coaches to intervene when at all possible.
Wow. Yeah, it's heavy, and the crazy thing is how much all of this seems to be connected, and like the results of, I guess, if one thing is imbalanced, like if there is an imbalance in that whole equation, like how it could create a problem. Because
yes,
you mentioned the sleep thing. Well, I've talked to plenty of fighters who tell me, their schedule is so crazy where they have to fit in the 2 days. They've got the obligations with the family or with the the friends, and whether it be the media stuff or whatever it has for whatever promotion. So that's like the sleep aspect, and then you have the pressure of, I've got a big fight coming up, I can't let anybody down, I'm on a 50-50 deal. If I lose, I don't get, I need my full paycheck to pay off whatever. Like the stresses that some fighters go through, I can't imagine. Yeah. And then Jeff Neal, for example, he's now a full-time fighter, So he eliminated one aspect of stress to where he doesn't have to worry about going to work, throughout the week. He can just focus on training.
He's the example in my mind around sleep. It's funny you mentioned Jeff Neal. He had a spectacular performance. Yes. Congratulations to Jeff. And I remember him talking about being wait staff. I think it was Moxie's. Wasn't it Moxie's or some restaurant? And so he would train and go to work sometimes till 2 a.m. and then get up early and go train. I remember that example exactly. And when you say that, Matthew, and this would be for any fighter who's got many things to balance, my counter, and I guess if I was the psychological coach for a fighter, I would say the best investment that you can make to enhance all of the work that you do especially in training camps. Let's talk about training camp. The investment that you make in your sleep in training camp pays off in a few ways. So number one is just the physical health requirements of sleep. So deep sleep is where your tissue repair happens at night. So that's where accelerated repair happens. That's where something called the lymphatic system, which is interstitial fluid that travels through your brain and it's like a car wash for your brain. It gets rid of a metabolic waste that happens during the day. It also helps distribute amino acids through your brain. It also helps with any kind of injury that you may have had, and we think about things like brain injury, well, the lymphatic system is part of that healing system that you need to have, and it happens during sleep, and specifically during parts of deep sleep. So that's number one. Number two is think about most fighters, except for maybe some heavyweights, are on a diet. Right? They're on a diet during fight camp. So when you shortchange your sleep, many things happen, but number one is that leptin and ghrelin. So leptin is a hormone that makes us feel like we're full, like we have satiation. That is goes out of whack when you don't sleep. So you don't feel like you've had a meal. And ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, gets jacked up. So that makes you feel hungry just due to sleep being too infrequent or not deep or not high quality. And then the other thing is around the immune system. Think about how shitty it is. How bad it is to let it fly. Or to catch a cold or have the flu during fight camp. If you sleep less than 7 hours, you are 3 times more likely to catch a flu virus if you're exposed to it. This has been done in experiments. And if you sleep less than 6 hours, you're 4 times more likely to be susceptible to a flu virus. So just making sure that you have good quality sleep, which is not messed up by pre-workout or caffeine or alcohol use, and you're protecting that time, does immense things for your recovery from training, for your ability to be coachable, because it allows learning connections to be made. The connections of learning and anxiety management and creative solution happens during REM sleep. And that is protected. And then, of course, your immune system is recharged at night. So any other demand that you may have, if you think about the investment that you make in your sleep, pays off. It's a high return on investment for the time spent sleeping.
Tracey, how much, because this is Matt pet peeve, and people in boxing, being I'm pretty cool with people on both sides. Yeah, man, how do you deal with the fools from MMA? What do you mean, fools? They be cutting 25 pounds in 4 days. Like, people strip out on that. How much is that playing a role in this? Because, let's look at the common sense. I'm a welterweight. I get the fight week. I weigh 195. I cut down to 170. I make everything on Friday, and I'm gonna go get in the head and get in the Kobe Covington / Kamaru Usman type war on Saturday. You don't just walk away from that unscathed. I'm not talking about broken jaws.
Yeah, man, that's I am not a weight cutting specialist.
No, I'm saying that's brain. You get hit in the head more yes. susceptible to getting the full impact, right? Because you're not 100% to take it.
Of course. And, certainly, leading into, if you're a short notice replacement on a fight and it's an opportunity and you have good people around you who you trust to help you through that weight cut and you know the risks involved, I suppose that is in some cases opportunities that people feel are worth the risk. I do wonder about, especially big water cuts that happened in the last parts of longer fight camps, where there's still the psychological desire to be physically the bigger person in the cage that night. That is perhaps something separate than an opportunity that came last minute. And it leads to something separate from that, although somewhat connected, which is around performance anxiety, which can be quite common. It's very common, and certainly pre-fight nerves is very normal. And we don't want to pathologize normal feelings in a given event. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people whose self-worth and belief about their value as human beings is tied to performance. If they are identified as super athletes very young in their life, and the majority of the positive regard that they get is they're developing their self-identity is about performance and about being this high-performing athlete or any other kind of high performer, either in academics or chess or as an artist or singer. There's a risk with tying in successful performance in the extreme anxiety around what it means to be successful and tying in their value as people and their regard by others and how well they perform as having an incredible and immense burden on their shoulders for that performance that just raises performance anxiety to a whole other level. And so that's quite different. And so if you think about that kind of person who has very, very deep running performance anxiety, sort of developmental origins, levels of anxiety, then going into a fight camp and feeling like the additional advantage that they would have by being much bigger in the cage, that they're willing to do fairly heavy weight cuts so they don't have to cut too much body fat and too much muscle down so that they can truly be the bigger athlete. That is a little bit different, I think, and could probably benefit from some exploration or some coaching around, let's take a look at some of the beliefs you might have, separate from the physical realities of there is some advantage about being the person who's a bit bigger, but what is it in your mind that's going on that tells you that you have to have that advantage in order to be 100% successful? And the perceptions around all of the performance indicators around anxiety that is making hard for you to cope in that moment, separate from your size.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the weirdest things to me in MMA is that this notion, I don't know where it started, where guys were like, oh, I have to be the bigger guy. When you go back to day one of UFC, it was about just being the better skilled guy,
It's crazy, right?
But I mean, I guess I do get the fact that the sport has evolved where everybody knows everything now, where it was a little bit different earlier in the early goings of MMA. But still, like the fact that these guys just do this to where they're virtually killing themselves, where we see guys bring themselves to the brink of death. And again, we bring up Kamaru so much on this, but he was talking about that on the Anatomy of the Fighter this week. A little behind the scenes as he's sitting there cutting weight, talking about my body might shut down on me. I don't know, but I'm still going to do it because I got to get to the scale.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just madness.
Yeah. But, if you study people who are in pursuit of excellence, that's not so different than almost anybody who is extremely, extremely focused and extremely determined on a goal, who are high ability, high performing people who have high levels of excellence. I mean, the person who comes to mind for me is George St. Pierre, and the complete organization of his life around performing well. So once he decides this is a commitment and something that he wants to do, he's full in. And my friend Robin Black, who I love and respect dearly, Yeah, pardon me, Bink? Absolutely. He has many layers and many dimensions of Bink that he's explored, and I think he's just wonderful. But he was invited to do a deep dive and follow GSP in his training camp for the Michael Bisping fight, his preparations around that. And it was because of course, the trust and the friendship that the two of them had that Robin was allowed to be part of that camp. And I just think that they did an amazing job in capturing that documentary, his journey. And what you just described is, what Kamara was describing in The Anatomy of the Fighter, which I love the series. I love Will's work. I think he's an amazing filmmaker, very talented, and has certainly paid his dues. I'm happy to see his success. So
definitely.
Shout out to Will.
Shout out to Will for sure.
But that documentary of GSP's preparation, what we didn't know behind the scenes was, of course, he was developing, I believe it's IBD or colitis that he was developing, that he was, eating huge amounts of food and had a bit of probably an epigenetic risk for that to occur, which was then triggered by this journey he took to become the bigger fighter and to explore this new form of excellence. And so superimpose that on what he'd already described before he left for 4 years, which is this obsessive mindset, which very much allows him to be successful. Although I want to be clear, isn't a necessity for all people to be successful. You can certainly develop excellence in performance and coping around stress without those things. But for GSP, for other athletes, and maybe Kamara, who I don't know, this is just their path. And so it is, I think, incumbent on coaches and trainers to be informed around good mental health practice, but also when they're athletes, whether they're fighters or in the NBA or in other sports, to be good stewards of their fighters' well-being, whether it be physical or mental or otherwise.
100%. Now, do you think we should have, but do you think there should be, I don't know, when they do these fighter retreats at the Performance Institute, like they've done in the years past, should there be some sort of, I guess, dedicated entire day to just talking about the mental space? Because I also feel like there's some guys, some ladies that...
It's not me. I don't need that.
Well, yeah, once they figure, okay, I'm going to be a professional fighter, they kind of, I don't want to say they completely dismiss the, taking care of my brain portion of the sport, but it's almost like they just chalk that up as a hey, if it happens, it happens. If I get CTE, I get CTE or whatever. I've gotten that from a couple of people, and that's also concerning. It's that should never be a thing. That shouldn't just be like part of the waiver that you sign, so to speak.
Yeah, you began the question. I think it's a great question. You began the question asking, should there be a day around wellness? Yes, and how I think that I would deal with that question if I was in that situation is to connect wellness, specifically mental and physical wellness, because again, we want to talk about those things in unison. We don't want to separate them out. We want to make them part of holistic health on that continuum of wellness to illness, from high performance to being in a bad situation. We talk about the things that are part of that. And I guess I would say that I for the most part, think that if you have an athlete, a fighter or other kind of athlete who is coachable, and is successful because they're coachable. That means that they're open to feedback, that they see their own mistakes, that they are open to more information and to constant improvement. The things that you would offer them in a talk around wellness and some of the risks and some of the things that you can do preventatively would likely be in the milieu of coaching and improvement and having every advantage that they could have. I can't imagine an athlete who wants to have a good long career and who wants to make good money and or wants to achieve a title or excellence of some sort doesn't want to have every advantage. And I would say that the way that you introduce this information is to legitimately, because this is absolutely true, is to say, I will give you information that increases your likelihood of having a longer career, that gives you better information to make decisions, and makes it more likely that you will be well by having this embedded as part of your overall wellness. and whether it be a retreat or anything else. And I would begin with talking about nutrition and sleep, some of those lifestyle factors which are critical and really important. Just talking about the investments of sleep. So there was an excellent, what I like to call a sneaky study, because he didn't need people's permission to do it. I'm going to pull out I made a note on this because I know, Kendrick, that you are a sports writer, that you do, I think you do a little bit of writing in NBA, do you not, Kendrick?
Yes, ma'am. You done some research.
Yeah, I have. I like to know the esteemed people who I am humbled to be asked to join. There was a beautiful, I'm looking at it right here. There was a beautiful, elegant study. It was published in the Journal of Sleep Health this year, Jones et al. In 2019. And what they did is they compiled or they merged 2 public data sets from Twitter and Yahoo Sports from 7 seasons of 112 verified NBA players for over 30,000 tweets or posts. And because they had timestamps on the tweets, they could trace who was late night tweeting the night before games. And so they did the mathematical crunching around that, and they were able to prove with very strong accuracy lower performance during the next day's game when the players were late night tweeting. And they were also able to prove the late night tweeting, so meaning shortening their sleep window, was predictive of decreased field goal shooting accuracy. It was lower the next day in the games. And so because they had so much data, they were able to, without anyone's permission, and because it was public posting, have a very strong association statistically. So I on my Twitter, I did screenshots of this study, and I with humor suggested that coaches and trainers creep on their athletes' social media to see the late night liking or tweeting or posting, and how, just observing whether or not their performance is impacted, because we know that decreased sleep time reduces reaction time. It makes it harder to remember your game plan and to pivot with that ease of flow when you are fatigued and when you don't have that both your REM and your deep sleep at its optimum amount.
And final question for me: has anybody from the UFC ever reached out to you about working with athletes in general, or will we see you at a fighting event or in the NBA arena in the near future? Like if a certain player reached out to you and said, "Hey, I want you to be my person," because I know I've seen people from on not as serious. Kobe Bryant had a back spasm the night before they played the Lakers were playing San Antonio. They come to Dallas. He flies in his masseuse overnight to come, and so he can loosen up. And he didn't even play the first half, and he comes in the second half, gets on his magic carpet, and win the game. But I know that's how those high level guys invest in stuff that they think is important.
Sure.
Would you be that for somebody, regardless of what sport it is or anything like that? Because I know it's more high profile than what you like, but it definitely would be making a difference for that particular athlete.
So I have, just connections that I have through people following each other. I follow some people who are at an executive level in a few different fight promotions. I guess I'm a bit of a unique niche in that I'm consistently posting on when I think the information is of value around mental health and fighter and performance well-being, performance and well-being. I would say, as a crisis person in the moment, that's actually not the philosophy that I would ever really advise. I advocate for wellness programs and coaches and fighters to do the work ahead of time, to not go, oops, didn't take care of my mental and physical well-being, I'm in a crunch now. Certainly you need to help and support that person, but I guess my entire argument is invest in that early. So, get someone on board on your team who knows obviously a lot about performance and about mental health, but also is able to provide some of that early work as part of an entire athlete wellness program, but also enabling and supporting coaches to be that for them as well. You don't always want to be the holder of the information. I think anyone who is ethical and really wants to give back to coaches and to athletes gives away their knowledge. And I really want to give away my knowledge. I don't want to hoard it. I want people to have have access and be aware of information long before they're in a crisis point. I do respond to, again, reach outs behind the scenes from athletes and fighters, but it really is per my time can allow, because I truly am in corporate healthcare world from Monday to Friday, and I also have a fairly heavy training schedule. I'm in the gym lifting quite seriously. Gym comes first. So, and sleep. As soon as we are off the call today, I want to show you guys something. So these are my mid-level blue light blocker glasses that I put on, and I put these as soon as I come in, right after work. I usually get home from work in the gym around 7 p.m. And that I put those on for, look at you, Matthew. Yeah, you got yours. However, these are my mid-level. These are on for the first couple hours. The hour before I'm going to sleep, which is when I want to get rid of all bright light and all blue blocking light, which is important so that you don't suppress melatonin production. We all know what melatonin is, right? So melatonin is a sleep hormone, and that is something that can be suppressed when bright light, and especially blue wavelength light that's very bright, comes into the eye, hits the retina, goes into the SCN of the brain, and that affects melatonin production or suppression in this case. So I put these guys on, and these are red lenses that have, and these are literally just, there's a generic ones. I'm not gonna, no brand here they're promoting. They have side blocking of that, and they get rid of all blue light. And these are on for an hour before I want to go to sleep, and then it is lights out at 9 p.m. for me. I'm up at 5 a.m. So long-winded answer is, I am open to being connected to, when I have the moment. This is pro bono work that I do, but it's really as my time allows. And it's usually no more than 1 or 2 a month that I do. So I guess that's my answer to your question. No promises, and I prefer to give away my knowledge and not hoard it.
That's awesome. And this conversation has been amazing. I do have one more question before we get into, I know you said you wanted to share some links to stuff like that as well. So my final question for you is, it's kind of on the flip side of the previous question. Like, do you think that some promoters out there, specifically maybe a promotion at the top of the game per se, let's use that as an example, do you think that they would want to kind of suppress and keep people with your sort of knowledge away from the fighters so that they aren't as concerned, so they will be more willing to take a short notice fight, so they will be more willing to cut more weight just to fill a spot on this card, to do these kind of things just to benefit the promotion, so they can kind of have like this worker bee mentality no matter what's going on?
It's interesting that you bring this up, because I actually believe the opposite. I think that no. So I do not believe that this would happen, because I think that when we have people running promotions who are very smart people who want the business to be successful, they invest in their athletes, and the UFCPI is one of the very best examples of that, is to provide at no cost to the athlete basically any training, nutrition, evaluative service that they can. And, I know a couple of the nutritionists there. Duncan French is the VP of UFCPI. He has a PhD, and he is, I am connected to him via Twitter. This is a man who has a lifetime of knowledge about what it takes to support athletes, to have good performing athletes, and to run a business well so that the athletes have longevity, which makes them money. So no, I don't believe that is something that would happen. I've never seen an example of it, actually, never. And I've been in contact with many coaches and fighters, many at a high level pro level. I've never heard an example of that. It doesn't mean it may not have happened, but I've never heard an example of that.
Gotcha. So give us the homework. We're going to post some links, obviously below the description of the video, and we're going to attach it to the audio side as well, so people can click on the stuff. So What is the required reading that we're taking away today?
Okay, so I'm actually, what I'll do is I will send you a message after with some hyperlinks around that. What I'd like to do, because I don't have a supplement or a business to shout out, I don't have any side hustles, I'd like to recognize people who are doing good work in this area and give them a shout out and give them a little bit of a come up. A few coaches who I think have really got this mental wellness game embedded very, very well. Their knowledge, have really done their homework very, very well around the psychological resilience piece. First of all, I would say absolutely Mark Montoya at Factory X. He absolutely gets it and nurtures all aspects of wellness in his fighters, first and foremost. He's also an real ethical leader and coach, and will support his athlete, his fighter, at any aspect of their life, and I know this to be true. Dean Thomas, I think, is an example of someone who really, really gets the psychological wholeness of a person, what that brings to the fight game. Also, just a good human being. Firas Zahabi does a beautiful job of that. And then, of course, Danny Kaur, who works on that youth MMA aspect in Northern Ireland. I just can't say enough about this guy. There's another person who I want to shout out who's a Canadian. I follow him on Twitter. His name is Adam Lorenz. He actually wrote a paper that I want to give a little bit of a shout out to. I'll give you a link to this, you guys. It's called Hierarchy, Community, and Attachment, Integrating At-Risk Youth into Martial Arts and Combat Sports Academies. And he is an MMA athlete. He owns Modern Martial Arts in Saskatoon. Of course, Max Holloway headlined a fight night at USC Saskatoon way back in the day. And he is a private practice therapist with a master's degree in counseling, and also a trainer and a gym owner. And I think this is just a wonderful blend of all the best things that I think are going on right now. People who are experts in the field that I get my information from, who I think are just absolutely brilliant. Ian Dunnican, he is Sleep for Perform on he's either Twitter or Instagram, I think is great. Matthew Walker and Rhonda Patrick, of course, both of them have been on Joe Rogan's podcast. I think they're really elevated a lot of these conversations very well. Matthew Walker was on Rhonda Patrick's podcast called Found My Fitness this year. They've had like a 2.5-hour conversation on all things sleep that would be of high interest, I think, to coaches and fighters on how to really optimize their performance so that they can benefit from their training. Sachin Panda, literally his last name is Panda. How wonderful is that? He's the guy on circadian rhythms. So anything to do with your 24-hour body clock and how to optimize your sleep-wake cycles for training. Georgia Edie, her last name is EDE. She is a psychiatrist with a background in nutrition and biological science who actually has, more than anyone, connected nutritional science and nutritional research, evidence-based nutritional research, to mental health and mental illness. She does that very, very well. I follow her. Jose Antonio and Corey Peacock are two guys that I follow. Of course, Jose Antonio is the founder of ISSN, which is the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and Dr. Corey Peacock, of course, is a performance coach, and he's connected to Hard Knocks down in Florida. Just they're researchers, and they're really embedded in the work and have really done amazing things. I'm going to, for the trauma and mental health and healing side, I want to shout out Dr. Nicole LaPera, and she is the holistic psychologist on YouTube and the holistic psychologist on Instagram. And what she does very well is she gives very practical advice on people, including a lot of fighters who we know who may have, histories of trauma, physical or sexual abuse, domestic violence in their background. She helps people with their own healing around trauma and how to deal with trauma and boundaries. So it's a holistic psychologist. And then Dr. David Klonsky, who is at Klonsky, so with a K, Klonsky Lab on Twitter. He is also connected to Robin Black, and they've been working on a book around combat sports mentality and psychology for a very long time. He's at UBC. He's also a suicide researcher and a BJJ practitioner. So those are my shout outs. I think these guys are getting it right, and I think they are fantastic people to follow.
Amazing stuff, Tracey.
All
Amazing
right.
stuff. We appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on, especially
Thank
considering
you.
you don't, like you said, you don't usually do this sort of thing. So we definitely appreciate you
for coming on the scene for us, from behind the scene to on the scene.
All right. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work. I love your podcast, and I love the approach that you're taking to be kind of being diverse in your topics, and keep it up. I really love it, and I do watch your podcast. So
appreciate it.
awesome. Cheers, guys.